This is Beyond the Big Screen podcast with your host, Steve Guerra.
Here is another Beyond the Big Screen teaser for episodes coming soon. I hope you enjoy and definitely tune in for future episodes. If you want to learn more, you can head over to beyondthebigscreen.com. You can also send me an email to steve@a2zhistorypage.com or follow us on social media by searching for A2Z History. I will see you next time beyond the big screen.
Into the 90s with, Dances with Wolves and Unforgiven and stuff like that. The 70s at that point, as part of the revisionist movement that not only Peckinpah was also a part of, but also European directors like Sergio Leone, Sergio Corbucci, they were really kind of breaking down a lot of the barriers that the family-friendly Western from the end of the 30s up until the end of the 60s had such a strong grip in Hollywood and in media. You couldn't go to any theater or to any TV station without a Western coming on. To put that into perspective, in today's time, it's kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe where, how many Marvel movies, just a personal question, just you don't have to be right on it or anything, but how many Marvel properties do you think are coming out just in the past 2 years?
And I always had this thing in my mind when I would read about these things that Tunstall must have been an old guy, or at least a little bit more advanced in age, that he's gone out in the middle of nowhere like that, set up a ranch. He's pretty young at this point.
He is rather young. He's, from my understanding, he was around his late 20s, early 30s. So he was a little bit more mature. And for these guys that were being more or less adopted by Tunstall and being offered a new life and legitimate work and stuff like that, they looked at him as a father figure, including Billy. So when Tunstall is wound up dead in the desert, riddled with gunfire, they get pissed and they want justice.
Who were some of the people that Tunstall brought on, and what was the purpose of forming what was more or less a gang?
You had, much like Billy, a lot of toughs and people like that who didn't necessarily know what they were going to do with their lives, working, trying to survive one day to the next. So you have people like Dick Brewer, Charlie Beaudry, Josiah Doc Scurlock. And then you also have quite a few Hispanic individuals who are also working for Tunstall, and they're also part of the Hispanic community. Jose Chavez, Yino Salazar, and then even some other Irish members of the Irish community who are sort of disillusioned from Murphy and Dolan, including Tom O'Folliard and James French. So they really are kind of this motley crew of sorts, they're forged together under the fatherhood of John Tunstall. He doesn't really have a plan at all. Remember, this is just a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid. I can attest personally, when I was 19 years old, I didn't have a life plan. I mean, I had ideas, but I didn't have a long-term plan or anything like that. So for a kid in his early 20s who has escaped prison multiple times, killed people in gunfights, and is still surviving, trying to survive day to day, he doesn't know where else to go. And even if he does try to cross the border into Mexico, he's going to stick out like a sore thumb, even though he supposedly did speak fluent Spanish. He's going to stick out like a sore thumb there. And he decides to stick around in the same area. Again,
he makes his way to a place called Fort Sumner. It was an abandoned U.S. Army fort that kind of became a bit of an outlaw's hideout, where smaller ranchers and other outlaws and stuff like that could it was like a little outlaw's paradise. And he stays there and he starts cattle ranching for a Hispanic rancher named Pete Maxwell. And supposedly Billy sparks a relationship with Pete Maxwell's sister, Paulita.